Hi, this is part two of my color lecture. So, hope you guys are surviving it. But it's not for everybody, it's only those who actually care. That's all. That's all. So, we were talking about color and paying attention to how it makes you feel and the uses of the space before you make a choice in color. Now, now as much the last thing we were talking about was like these shades of yellow, right? And it doesn't hurt to research psychological effects of color to certain subjects, right? So I know when I was doing a nursery design some years ago, as much as I personally love yellow, okay, and I wanted to incorporate it in the design, especially also because it was on trend as well. Um, I found out that it's not always the best color to use in a space for babies because sometimes it can make babies restless. Now, how would I have known that? They didn't teach me that in design school, right? I had to go and like find that out for myself because I know that once I do something, I like to sleep good at nighttime. Same thing when I do like kitchen and bath design, right? My suggestions can only go but so far. Only but so far. My customer has to be fully on board with a choice that's being made because once they're living with, especially when you're talking tile, right? Once they're living with that color and they're sitting on their plumbing wall in the morning, you're not going to be upset with me, right? You are going to be thinking about your life. You're going to be thinking about, did I make the right decision? So that's why whenever I tell a client no, I have a reason for telling them no. I just don't like, I'm not vetoing nothing out. But I let them know that if we are going to go with your choice and your choice is not my first choice, I'm going to make you aware of this is what's going to tend to happen. This you might end up feeling this way. You might end up seeing this. You understand? This might have to cancel out that. You have to kind of like anticipate a client's expectation on what they think that they're doing for themselves, right? So, and it's the same thing for realtors, guys. Like if you haven't done a walkthrough of a house, how can you show that house properly and sell it? You understand? You have to allow yourself to experience it and then think about from a consumer standpoint, how is that person going to react to it? And it's the same thing when it comes to color, right? If someone tells you my absolute favorite color is red, I love red. I love red. I love the intensity. I love the boldness. Then you're not going to be able to do you're not going to be able to like introduce another color opposite of that without a good reason. You have to like support it with a reason, right? So pay attention to color, pay attention to how it makes you feel. Research what you're using the space for. Think about are you just doing it for style? Are you doing it for nostalgia? Right? Any words that you don't understand, please go and look it up, right? Because I can't, I'm not going to dumb down anything that I feel that I need to say. So think about if it's for nostalgia. Think about, is it a color? Is it a cultural reference? Okay. Is there a cultural significance? All of those things are really important, all right? So, when you go over color with a client, give them a few choices. And do not be afraid to go a shade lighter. Okay, do not be afraid to go a shade lighter. It's one of those things where, when someone says you can never be too dressed up, you can when it comes to color. You can be too saturated. All right. There is still a way based on the chroma of a color, okay? Like, out of all these colors, right? Which is the most chromatic? I would say this one or this one. This one has a lot of light. This one has some intensity to it, but it has a lot of chroma compared to the other two shades of green, right? So think about always going lighter if you can. But think about the feeling that color is generating. Like, what is it producing? What is that color, what does it make you think of? Does it make you think nature, right? Is that the motif that you're going for the room? Is that what you're trying to do? Because what you want to do is pay attention to the feeling. Because if you pay attention to the feeling, then you could know if a lighter version, but from the same family, is going to work. And sometimes it's better for you to take creative liberty and lighten a choice, even for a customer, especially when you're dealing with a customer. I mean, don't surprise anybody, right? You always show them, okay? And when you're introducing it, and you feel like there's a better choice, you let them know, like, hey, I think I find that this is going to be better, and this is why I think it's going to be better, okay? So I mentioned a few things like, psychological, who's using the room. There's so many things that like alter this choice, okay? And when in doubt, go lighter, all right? Because you don't want to be in doubt, and then you have this highly pigmented color staring you, giving you the death stare, and you're just, God, why did I do that? When in reality, if you wanted something to kind of like give you a feeling, right? And the color gave you a particular feeling, you might be able to find an accessory that has that intensity of color, and that can invoke the feeling. Okay, so that's why accessories are important when it comes to interior design, because especially when somebody is like a well-traveled individual and they gather trinkets and things like that, they're able to curate a space that is like fully reflective of what it is that they like. So that's something else to pay attention to as well. If your customer is a traveler, what do they like to travel? What do they like to gather? What does the artwork look like that they like to put together? Do they want it featured? All of that, right? But color is something that you feel. Same thing with pattern, right? Pattern, it is the same energy. It's a similar energy, not the same energy. It's a similar energy. But it really does boil down to a gut feeling. And do not forsake that inner feeling of like, oh, what do I feel about this? I think people that do like event decor, tasteful event decor, they have a good sense of color. They do. There's an event decorator. She's Italian. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but I know that I was following her on social media, and she can transform the energy of an event. She can say so much about the celebrant based on the colors that she's using. She says a lot about the celebrant's pockets as well, based on what she's using, the finishes and things like that. And that's something to pay attention to, because, gaudy, there's a thin line between gaudy and gorgeous. There's a thin line, thin line between gaudy and gorgeous. And I find even when it comes to like personal fashion, there are people that I know, they tend to be like born a certain time of the year, but they don't have that sense of what's that thin line between gaudy And they don't, it doesn't even like dawn upon them. They're just like, oh, it matches, it's the color. No, you have to think about scale. You got to think about the intensity. Is it shining? Is something reflective off the other? Does it kind of like, does it go with each other? What's the under, like, no, like some people don't even put any thought into that. You understand? But when it comes to your interiors, you got to think about, I have to live in this space. I have to cook in this space. Personally, like how I told you, like, yellow is my favorite color. My kitchen, my cabinets are like the brightest yellow. The brightest yellow you have ever seen. But you know what? I know that I love a bright, cheerful kitchen. I know that I love it. And the color, it doesn't matter if you're doing like French provincial. It doesn't matter if you're doing like 2021 modern clean line. It doesn't matter if you're trying to do monochromatic. Like yellow is always a great color when you're trying to like fall in those particular lines, right? But yellow is not cute when you are doing like, certain genres of colonial. It's not cute because the color didn't even exist during that time period, right? So you always got to come back to what's the historical reference to it. Don't be afraid of doing that. Historical references in color, it never ever, I love when I'm challenged with that. I had to do a vernacular compound in Miami. Okay. It was for my friend Zig. And the compound had about, I think, 6 or 8 bungalows, right? 2 of them were really large, and then compared to the others, and then, the rest were smaller. And I remember at one point I had to advocate on behalf of the property that tile not be used in some of the spaces in the bungalow, because I needed the bungalow to, because you can't change the exterior of the house, right? This is a historical property now, right? This is where color comes, is a big issue. Now I have to stay within the historical reference of the house. The architecture of the house tells me what colors I can use. So because the architecture told me what colors I can use, it also told me about, some of the tile that he thought was amazing, and I had to talk him out of it. I'm like, no, you cannot do that, right? Because the subfloor of some of the bungalows, or all of the bungalows, were terrazzo. Now, granted, this was in the end of 2019, okay? Terrazzo was coming back with like terrazzo was hitting the market from every single direction you could imagine. It's bad when it's leaking into fashion. They were making terrazzo earrings, they were making terrazzo flower pots. Like terrazzo was just coming back with a storm. And the fact that it's something that's so vernacular and people are just, they are so against it. Like, oh no, I gotta put this, god awful whatever color tile. Why would you do that? You got to think, how can I incorporate what this architecture is telling me? Now, for you to even respect the architecture, you would need to have done some studying. You got to respect what it is that you're dealing with. Don't come in and try to completely change something. All right? Unless the customer is vehemently like they're against it, because in the end of the day, they have to live with it, not you, right? But you got to remember that color says a lot about taste, right? And if someone is bringing in a decorator, you want the taste. You want the taste to stand out. You don't want it just to be only about color because something matched. That's not good enough, right? That's the same thing I was telling you, in regards to people that I know, like, some individuals, the way they dress, they're only going to wear something because it matches. They don't think about, like, that's something for a formal That has a formal energy to it. And then this is too casual. And this is way too dressy for that, right? I'm trying my best to like not make a direct reference, because people, people are just so sensitive. But you always know when, no, let me not say that. Oh God, let me think. Let me not, because it's gonna be too much on people's personal style. So, but when it comes to interiors, don't feel like you cannot ask a question, because it, like, only ask a question if it has to do with your design. Only. Like, what is the use of it? Who's going to be occupying it? That sort of thing, right? And, color is emotional. Color is psychological, okay? Color is energy. Color is life. Color is nature. Nature, if you don't appreciate nature, you're not going to appreciate color. So I can't even imagine somebody wanting to be an interior decorator and they don't like nature. I don't know a interior decorator that is not a lover of nature. That's someone that like goes to the beach. They like to go hiking. They love to camp. They love to garden. There is going to be a love for nature innately when you are passionate about color. So that might also be a barometer that you want to measure your enthusiasm against when it comes to color. And that's the reason why in the beginning of part 1, I was just so emotional, right? Like color is everything. Color is life. Color is life. Right? Color is when, especially, in babies that are not highly pigmented, color is what tells you that baby is going to survive or that baby is going through is going through distress, right? Color is important, right? Color tells a woman if she's healthy, right? You know what I'm speaking about. Color, when you look in your mouth and you're examining, your mucous membranes, color tells you if things are not okay and things are okay, right? Color is everything, people. And if you feel like color is an afterthought, then you are not, it's better for you to go and get direct consulting or make a direct reference, okay? Do your research, go on Pinterest, ask questions, okay? For myself, when excuse me. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is masculinity and femininity. There is a misconception that women want to be in pink spaces and boys want to be in blue spaces, right? What is constantly ignored, I think, when you are talking about like the furniture market and that type of thing, right? What we consider for little girls, what we consider for little boys, we are forgetting that, and this is something to keep in mind when you are trying to create your home to accommodate yourself and you have a spouse, okay? You're the wife, your husband, you got to think about like what he uses a lot, what does he like, what is he attracted to, that type of thing, right? So the soft colors that are very feminine, it isn't really for us women, right? And let me just go a step further, because there seems to be this like narrative in politics now where it's like you can't say that this and you can't say that is that. I'm not here for that. I'm here just to talk about design, okay? And when it comes to decorating for the sexes, don't assume that what a man wears is what a man is okay with living in, okay? Just because he's a banker and he's in finance and he wears stripes and navy and black and and if he got some style, he's wearing brown and some greens and stuff like that. Don't think for a second that he doesn't want his home space to not be colorful, right? Men have feelings too, right? They are attracted to the feminine calling that a woman wears. They love that, right? Men love to see reds and pinks and things like that, right? It taps into human psychology and human sexuality. So women, just because we like to, we may like the femininity we exude, we ourselves may appreciate it, that, we wear something very feminine, but that doesn't necessarily mean we want our environment to be all frilly and all of that stuff. For all you know, it may depress you, right? You got to think about, like, what do you want your space really to do for you? Do you want to feel anchored? Do you want to feel grounded? Do you want to feel protected? You probably are going to appreciate having strong colors in your environment than having just light colors. Okay, you might want to, learn about having a green thumb and find some easy plants that you can incorporate in your space so you can have something alive and something green. You understand? There is nothing wrong with having dark base colors for your furnishings and then just having your accessories light and bright and whimsical, or whatever the case may be. There's even some furniture that screams masculinity, and a woman likes that. You understand? Chesterfield, right? For an instance, like a Chesterfield sofa with all of the tufting, you can do you can get it in any color, right? But let's just say you chose to do it in a very, very dark green, very, very, very dark green, right? A very, very, very dark green. Or you chose to do it in a chocolate brown or something like that. That can give you the emotion, that can give you the energy of anchoring in your space, especially if you're a person that you're constantly running and ripping and all of that, and you just want your space to feel homely and you want to be able to relax and lay out on your sofa, right? Think about what you commonly use your space for. How does it make you feel? Remember, we're tapping back into that emotion of what we think that, what that color does for us. How do we feel about it? So always pay attention to your feelings and don't make an assumption based on something as topical as what the market suggests, right? The suggestion in the market is only to promote consumerism. It has nothing to do with if it's necessarily good or bad for you. So you have to always measure what is good and bad for you. What is good and bad for my children? Is it a learning room? Like if you're creating a room for a small one, right? And this isn't like you're not pregnant and doing this. This baby is already here, right? This baby is lifting its head up. This baby is sitting up in his little bumble seat or whatever, whatever is on the market right now for little ones. And you have already started your homeschooling and all of that. You're going to realize that some of the educational material that's available for the children, it plays on sensory. It plays on what contrasts, what juxtapositions against each other, because you're trying to catch the attention of the baby to pay attention. Like, oh, this is a shape, okay. Now I can equate this shape with being round. You've put a name to it and all of that. So if you're trying to create a space that's a learning space, then sensory is going to be a big situation. It's going to be very important, right? Let's just say you have like toddler boys and you know that you plan on homeschooling. You are going to want to pay attention to what speaks to the sensory. Like, what can I use that's relative to sensory? because I need to make sure that, my children have a very wide scope on how they see things when I'm educating them, right? So color is everything, guys. Color is everything, right? If you're decorating for an elder, I noticed, this is so funny, and I'm glad that I remembered this. When I do interior design for women between this age group and this age group, I won't say, okay, they tend to like a certain color, right? They love the wine. They love the the deep reds. They love the ruby colors. It's not every woman that likes that, right? But because of the market that I'm working in, okay, like we're in Miami or something like that, right? It tends to be women of a certain age and of a certain cultural background that love that color. Why is that? Because it has to do with what was the programming of that time when that woman was at a certain age, right? That's like you decorating an office for a guy, and he's a very serious character, right? But he loves to play video games. He loves to play video games, and he loves classic video games. As astute and serious as he is of a business, he's like a stockbroker or something like that, right? But he's a mature stockbroker, and he loved to play Pac-Man when he was young. Right? He loved Snoopy. He loved all of these type of caricatures, and characters when he was younger. He may want that part of his decor, right? But you got to think, like, what's the energy does that invoke? Is that bringing something joyful? Is that, is helping him relive his youth? What is it about that? And you have to pay attention to that. You just need to make a little mental note of it, because now when you meet a new customer, it gives you more information in your arsenal to speak to them and ask them about their interests, because now you've had this experience with this person that was like a connoisseur of art. He's a connoisseur of pop art, of video games, of superheroes from this era, whatever the case may be. You will be surprised what triggers someone, and a lot of times it stems from their childhood. It's just, we won't go into psychology when it comes to that, but it triggers from their childhood. So a person's upbringing, where they were brought up, what the things that their parents liked to do, what were spaces that they remembered when they were younger, being in, like, let's say, he's a 40-year-old man, but he remembers always going fishing with his granddad, and they would go fishing, they would go camping and they would go fishing. He might have a greater inclination to things that are motifs, accessories, things for his desk that remind him of that. Maybe it's a pastime that he still continues and he enjoys, okay? So he may like the fact that you found fish head knobs for the pulls of his drawer, right? He might like that you found copper fish head, shaped in the shape of a fish or whatever the case may be. Like, these are things that you need to ask. You understand? Because those are the little small details and touches that just heals somebody, right? Interior design sometimes is you producing the art that is going to help heal your client. Okay? Art, and that's a lot of times that's what art does for an artist, right? There's an artist that I absolutely love, and I got to see her transform and change from one field to the other, and then she started taking art quite seriously, and she's putting up art, and and now she's just a bona fide artist, and I love that, right? And she tends to stay on the brighter sides of things. You understand? That is her art. Now, if you want to buy into it, okay, and you want to bring some of that person's energy into your home, or you like that person's energy, you're going to want that art. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, design is spiritual. So I hope you weren't terribly, terribly bored during my little rants and, my passion chat about color and how to approach it, but also from the standpoint of how you approach it when you're going in to help somebody else, to capture that energy that they want for themselves. And then also for you to know how to self-reflect so you can make the correct choices and you're not living in regret, because you don't want to be in an environment where you're just constantly reminded about this regret. And I think it's best to correct regret and forget about the cost of it. Sometimes the effects of it can do more damage than the minus in the bank book when it comes to improving the milieu of your environment, right? Milieu, that's another word too. That's important when you are doing decor for health institutions, right? Milieu is important. I paid attention. What people don't know is that when I first left high school and I went into college, I was a psych major, and I worked in a psychiatric hospital. My mom was also a nurse, and she worked in a psychiatric hospital as well. And there's certain colors you would never see in a psychiatric hospital. Never. Not even the colors of the branding for the drugs that was given or distributed. Even the packaging, the color was kept in mind, right? Color for the craziest of us and for the most sane of us. Color is very important, and it is not to be, don't rebuke it, approach it, embrace it. Look into it, investigate it, pay attention to how you feel in your soul and your spirit when you're choosing color. If you are embarking on the journey of helping somebody else with getting their space together, pay attention to how they speak about color. If color is not that important to them, what they gravitate to, what color is their car, what color do you usually see them, wearing. If they allow you to look at their wardrobe, look at their wardrobe. So what does their color reflect? What kind of shoes do they like to carry? What kind of bags? You understand? If he's a man, what kind of shirts? Pay attention to the lines and all of that. But color is going to be at the root of all of it. All right, so we cannot ignore it. We cannot ignore what it does for us and to our mental well-being, okay, as humans. It affects animals. It affects babies. It affects us all right? So I hope you took notes if you are going into the education of what we're talking about, and go further and do more investigating and pay attention to the keywords and all of that, so you can be able to dig deeper and to know more about the passion of color. All right, this is Providence for Providence Life Design. Have a good one.